Libby Clark is the woman leaders call when everything is on the line and they need someone who can see what everyone else is missing. Attorney, former COO, trusted strategic counsel to some of the most complex companies and boards in the country. She's joining us on stage this May at the Wealth Catalyst Summit in New York for a panel that is going to change how you work with every advisor in your life. The questions you should be asking but aren't. You've hired the best, the wealth advisor, the estate planner, the tax accountant, the attorney, but the best strategies only get deployed when the right questions are asked and nobody told you what those questions are. This episode is your preview. Grab your seat at wealthcatalyst.com.
Women don't talk about money the way we should. Not honestly, not openly, and not with each other. But that's changing. I'm Shama Bunton, founder of Wealth Catalyst. And Getting Rich Together is where the conversation lives. Every week, a different woman, a different path, and a conversation that will change how you think about your own financial power. This community is growing and you belong in it. Please subscribe so you never miss an episode and leave us a 5-star review so more women can find their way here. Now, let's get rich together.
I am here with the formidable Libby Clark. Libby, you are just a brilliant whole system problem solver. I mean, talk about someone that people come to with all the things. A trusted strategic counsel behind some of the most incredible and complex companies and boards. Libby, you're a person that leaders call to when deals stall, when decisions bottleneck, when systems feel chaotic, and people are trying to figure out what the patterns are, how to solve these big complex issues. Not only as an attorney, a former COO, I mean, you are just so formidable. And yet I get to be here today to shine a light onto your greatness, not just all the things that you're up to today, but this incredible human that you are. Libby, welcome to Getting Rich Together. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me, including me, and for just the opportunity to spend time with you.
It's a gift. It's a gift to be able to hold space for your greatness and for the things in your life that have turned you into this incredible powerhouse woman. And so with that, you stand in front of me with a beautiful printed shirt with these fabulous glasses. Your hair looks gorgeous. No one can see. I'm wondering, Libby Clark, take me back to a young girl, 10, 12 years old. Were you wearing fabulous print shirts and wearing fabulous glasses? Was it pigtails, ponytails? Take me back to a young girl. Where were you in this beautiful world?
So I probably was the epitome of a person who was in love with her hair. And I think this is so important to say because it was sort of my Samson moment in the sense that my teeth were too big. My nose was too straight and angular. I was very gawky. I had an unbelievable amount of underdevelopment for 10 or 12 compared to my peers. But I had this fabulous hair. And I had this grandfather who told me, he used to say to me, Libby, you look like Veronica Lake. And it took me a lot of years to figure out who Veronica Lake was, but she had this beautiful swoop in front of her left eye, like Jessica Rabbit. And I used to stand in the mirror and I would say to myself, at least you have that hair, And I think that it just became something that if I didn't have anything else, like I had this hair, but when I really look back at it, it was I had a grandfather who saw me and who really saw who I was and celebrated an attribute that I could celebrate. And now it's, I'm in midlife and the hair is what it is. And it's less important to me than it used to be. But I was, in fact, a person in search of a thing I could hang on to, a thing that when I walked into a room, I felt powerful despite all the things that may not have been working for me. There was something where I connected to my inner Samson,
Fabulous. Okay, so this young girl was charged with fabulous hair. Where in this world were you growing up? What was school like for you at this moment? What were your parents like? And what was money like for you as this young girl?
Well, this is a great intro into the power of a single mother. So my mom had three kids and was one of the hardest working people I knew. She was single. We lived in a house that she paid for. She worked a job. She was a leasing agent for a major commercial leasing line. So she did major office equipment all the way up to airplanes. Just an amazing human being. And what I learned from her was how she could turn $5 into 500. We really did see someone whose creativity around money wasn't oriented in a sense of lack. It was oriented in a sense of what's possible with what we have. And so we still took trips. We did things together, but maybe we went to an army base. Maybe she took me to national parks. Maybe we did things that weren't necessarily high spend, but they were high impact. They were together, and they demonstrated her intentionality with money, even though there wasn't a lot of it. So what that taught me was a tremendous amount of work ethic, right? But also creativity with money and what's the story I attach to money? Is more necessarily better, or is intention a better way to spend it?
I love that. It's a really powerful young lesson to learn, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
to be able to witness and experience. And I have to tell you, I've been checking out some of our national parks and holy bananas.
Right?
I mean, like there's some
Mm-hmm.
really and I live in a national park. So I mean,
You
I guess
do.
there's like a little bias here for the things on our country that you really can't buy this sort of beauty. I
Yeah,
mean, it's incredible.
I've had the opportunity to visit many. I actually live in the largest state park in the nation. But it is, something I didn't appreciate nearly enough until I became, a fully developed adult. And I think for me, school, I'll say this, I went to a very exclusive all girls boarding school. It's the oldest high school in the country. I was able to succeed to that position through a scholarship and through my mom's uh, creativity, tenacity, recognizing my gifts. And it was really through that process where I learned the gift of travel. I learned to see the world. There was an international boarding school, so there was people from all over the world. So not just the gifts of America's beauty and gifts and riches, but from around the world. I had friends from Egypt. I had friends from Saudi Arabia. I had friends that were from Colombia or Japan. I mean, it's just amazing.
Okay, let's double click on how you and your fabulous hair ended up at boarding school internationally. Okay, was this like your idea? Were you like, all right, mom, I got a vision and I'm going to pitch
Yeah,
you
this is
into
such
this
a great,
plan? Like, how
yeah.
did this happen?
All right. So true story. I was a soccer. One of my gifts was playing soccer. I loved the feel of sports. I loved the sense I got of being completely in my body playing sports because I was such an intellectual human. So it was the place before yoga where I was like, oh, there's this other place I could stretch into and be fully present. For me, that was learning and playing soccer. And so I was in my region where I grew up, kind of a young star. And I went to play at this boarding school, and they saw me play there. And um, I said, Mom, I went to this place and I just got this sensation through my body. Like it was like I'd been there before, like I knew this place. We beat them pretty badly, but oh, sorry to my alumni friends who may have heard that. But anyway, we won. My team won. But the next thing I know, my mom had called and said maybe we should just take a tour. And the coach from the soccer team came over and said we'd love to have her and we'd love to offer her a spot. I still had to take my entrance exams and grade and have the grades to be a scholar athlete, but I was able to achieve that and I did graduate from that institution, which is one of the premier girls' high schools in the country.
Wow. Oh my
Yeah.
God. And it's also incredible at such a young age that you were able to feel what a full body yes was.
Hmm.
You know,
That is,
that's
I think, and yeah, and I think it's instructive to for me in the years that have opened since about what it means to really listen to my intuition, even when the logic doesn't make sense, when leaving every single friend, when wondering how your mom's going to make it, how is she going to help me get there? I mean, this was getting a public bus pass and like getting to school on the bus, like a public bus, not the school bus, and all of these things, and still saying, but I've had a clear signal. I have to listen.
mm,
And that
mhm,
has become a drumbeat of my life. When I
mm.
hear the clear signal, I go.
Yeah. And as a young person, I call those moments, at least it's like the first couple of times when you exercise that power, it's almost like the first times you realize you're magic, like, oh, there's like something inside of me that has a deeper knowing that maybe I can't quite put language to. And maybe honestly, we never should try to put language to it, but we try and we try to make it make sense. And so as you were then sort of thinking about exporting yourself into university and thinking about sort of who you wanted to be, certainly I imagine young Libby was like, I can do whatever it is that I would like to do because I have fabulous hair and I'm smart and I've willed all of these things to already happen in my young life. So, what was the experience of university like for you? How did you decide what you were going to study? How did you think about paying for it? Like, spill the tea.
Well, I think that something pretty transformative happened to me while I was at school, boarding school. So one of the things that was another one of my big yeses, and I still can't believe my parents agreed, but my best friends and I decided to take a trip in between our junior and senior year to the UK, to London and to Scotland by ourselves. 17, kind of coming up on 18. Some one of my friend's brothers, much older, was in a wedding, and so we were going out to meet him. So we'd have some supervision. But that was again another huge yes of like I could do this. I can really be on my own. I trust myself, and I'm and I'm in Edinburgh, and I call into my house to say hello to my mother, and I could hear the sound of her voice, and she says, "I have something to tell you when you get home." And I said, okay. And I had a sinking feeling. I turned to my best friend, Maura, who's still my best friend. And I said, she has cancer. And I knew. So I
Oh.
fly home with this like dread to my mom having stage 4 breast cancer in senior year in high school. And so all my plans, all the magic I might have that I may have to control the universe at 17 just leaked through my fingers. It just leaked right through. Like I don't have that kind of power, right? So my senior year was bone marrow transplant, was um, for her, not knowing if she'd make it to my high school graduation. She did, in a wheelchair and a mask, but she made it.
Mm.
Um, and I'm happy to say, though, I'll advance my story a little bit. She did live 11 years at stage 4 after the bone marrow transplant, but it radically altered the vision I had had in my brain about where I was going to go and what I was going to do. I had been accepted early decision to Vanderbilt University in Nashville. With her not being around, finances were really unclear. And my father was a lived in Kentucky, lived outside of Lexington, and because of in-state tuition, I went to the University of Kentucky, even though that was not where I had intended to go. And I had a blast. I went to they had a beautiful international relations program, particularly in the Middle East, because of um, the focus on horses and the horse trade and thoroughbreds. And so I got this unbelievable experience I didn't intend on having. So what I learned from that was no magic in the world can control the universe. And so that was the lesson in being adaptable and having your dreams snatched from your fingers, and having to play the hand that you're dealt, and to not turn that inward on myself, to really not turn a hand where all of a sudden I think I'm playing a full house. and somebody's carrying the trump,
Oh man.
right?
Yeah. I
So
mean,
the power of the pivot.
yeah. And also like again at a young age, like there's a deeper level of understanding that's not necessarily it's like nonverbal,
Yeah,
it's like, when life throws things at you, you either have a backbone of faith and resiliency and sort of,
mm-hmm.
navigate or you don't navigate and then life sort of further kind of tosses
Right.
you into some other directions while you
And
were
so
in.
it was a dark couple of years. I didn't know if she was going to make it. I'm on campus at UK, which is, by the way, a fantastic, really good time. Just so anyone who wants to know out there, like it's a great party school. I met a lot of people and had a really good time. And I went to a lot of basketball games in case anyone's asking. Um, but from there, I'm wandering around campus. So another big yes. I'm wandering around campus in my sophomore year, and I'm having that really sense of being ungrounded. What am I doing here? How did I get here? What's the path forward? I haven't, hey, spirit, I haven't heard any yeses lately. Like, what am I doing? And I look up, and there's a poster on the wall of this actually called Funkhauser building in the central part of Lexington. And it was a sign that said Aotearoa. And Aotearoa is the Maori word for New Zealand. And I said, I don't know what that is, but that's where I'm going. I walked into the office. I enrolled in an exchange program in cross-cultural leadership. And 4 months later, I was gone. And I moved my life to New Zealand to study leadership with the Maori and learning cross-cultural leadership and ways to lead from the collective. And I've grown up in the US, so I knew hierarchical, I knew representational, I knew republic government, but I didn't really know what it was like to live in community the way that they do in New Zealand, particularly in the marae and the village life. And so I went and I enrolled at the University of Waikato, and then the next chapter opened.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So you, I mean, it's so clear how you've been struck on this planet. It was almost as if like you were born and sometimes we hear these stories or these allegories of, and then this happens and this person and it's all very, meant to be storytelling to inspire you, and here you are sort of living out tales, right, that would seem to others to be like just stories of courage or stories of risk or stories of like adventure, but these are actual stories of your life, and you're putting yourself in these incredible situations, the being out with the Maasai, being able to experience how other people feel their own humanity, right? I mean, obviously, like leadership is how one of the ways in which we highlight our humanity in groups, right? And within our society. But to have such an early fundamental experience where your mind is still not yet fixed, right? It's like you're still this like beautiful elastic space. Please share. I'm sure this podcast could probably go like down that
Sorry.
rabbit hole for a
No.
long time. But share with me, if you would, like, and maybe it's more reflective or something you can feel and taste more now, but what are some of the core things that you feel shifted inside of you as a result of putting yourself in this experience that would have anyone who went through this would undoubtedly be changed, right? But you've gone into it not just as anyone, but as who you are and with your lived
Mm.
experiences up until that point. What shifted in you? What did you learn?
I think of my life as pre-NZ and post-NZ. I really do think I came back a different human being in all respects. And I think the biggest takeaway is I learned how to listen with my whole body, with my whole self. I learned how to be part of a land-based people. The power of place, the power of presence, the power of prayer, the power of people, the power, just keep going. I mean, so this idea of being rooted somewhere, rooted in self, rooted in belief, rooted in the sense of being led in the best possible way. What it did was it opened up my understanding of autonomy, what it means to be a free person with responsibility, to have the both ends, to be able to do anything and yet carry the responsibility for those around me. I had never had anyone demonstrate that to me in a way that I could really understand. And so when I came back, so much of my life was entering the strict worlds of law and investment and finance, and a lot of these places that do not naturally have the vernacular of that world, right? So everything was very hierarchical and top down. And me loving an adventure, why not? You know, why not put the why not put the magic device in my backpack and see how high I can climb to the top of the tower and then reveal it. So that was the journey of entering systems that didn't understand autonomy, the responsibility of autonomy the way that I did, and begin to work with. Um, I think of it as my training ground. How do we make decisions? How do we show up for ourselves? How do we hold and frame the overwhelm, the chaos, the things that can confront us, and how do we anchor? And that's who I became to my clients. I think that's who I became. I will not say I was that at 26, but over time, threading that worldview and that experience into systems, communities, people, because that is what we are. What it really did was enable me to become a rooted presence in decision making for clients and demonstrate what that could look like, what that could be, without getting it right, without being perfect, without thinking that there is some higher power that's going to come along and tap me on the head and say I did it all right. It's not coming.
Mm.
No one's coming to tell us that. That's inner work.
Mm. When you decided to pursue your law degree,
Mm.
was it rooted in, a feeling, was it rooted in a feeling of like fairness and justice, and like was it righteous? Like was it a moment of, or like where did you sort of root your decisions to practice? Because I think that in choosing law, right, it's like that's I mean, it almost seems like I'm choosing the path of the elder, right? Like I'm choosing the path of the wisdom. I choose to understand the system such that I can disseminate not only what those rules are, but my own interpretation
Mm-hmm.
and my own values and ethics onto that which I'm learning. So how did you sort of, what were some of the rooted issues
Yeah.
and reasons why you chose that?
I think the conversations that happened to me in New Zealand, I enrolled in law school 4 months after leaving New Zealand. So that tells you how close on the heels of that was. And at that time, I think I understood this intuitively, but the language for it came later, which was law is a dialogue in power. Okay, so it's you trade some of your humanity in exchange for the ability to speak in power, right? The power of systems, the power of rules, the power of ethics, the power of hierarchy. It really is the architecture of power. Law is the architecture of our system. And so I wanted to be powerful. And so looking back on that, I think I can say that with great humility and just transparency, that I looked around at the places where I had felt weak, feckless, unhelpful, whatever. And I didn't want to feel that way. And I thought, I just got this huge gift and all this amazing. Where can I be powerful? And I made the bargain. I won't call it Faustian, but I made the bargain. I said, okay, you can have a little bit of me if you'll give me the keys to the power of this society, this culture. You don't have the ones they have in New Zealand, but you have these. Maybe I could have those. And that's the brain of a 22-year-old.
Real quick, I want to tell you about something I built for you. May 14th, New York City, the Wealth Catalyst Summit. One day, 140 women who are serious about what they do with their money. Executives, founders, investors in the same room having the kinds of conversations that just don't happen anywhere else. Private markets, real estate, how to get on boards, how to buy a business, how to make your capital actually reflect what you believe. If you've been listening to the show, you already know that this is your room. Seats are limited, and we are coming up on this event May 14th. So register today at wealthcatalyst.com. Link is in the show notes. Now, back to the conversation.
Something I've come to realize about myself recently is I was sharing with someone about, spiritual journey and evolution of
Mm.
self. And I said, well, in my 20s, I had deep intellectual and philosophical knowledge. It wasn't paired with an embodied knowledge because I was so young. So I carried wisdom and I was
Yeah.
making conscious decisions, but by virtue of age, some things are not embodied and they just can't be because of
They can't
age.
be,
But
I say metabolized. It's,
yeah,
knowledge is not behavior. It takes a long time. I think this is my wisdom looking backwards. It takes a long time to metabolize wisdom, to
yeah,
metabolize knowledge into wisdom, you know, because we can know a lot of things and not behave into it. I mean, that's the story of most of my life advising people. Um, which is and I'm now more interested in that. What keeps me from behaving into what I know to be right for me, what I know to be the right decision, not for me, but for my clients. That they already know what they want to do. What holds them back? More interested in that piece than the other. And I think a lot of that is because I lived a life where, I knew I wanted to have impact, right? Don't make the choices you make as me and not want to have impact. But the path was anything but clear.
Hmm. So when you were emerging post degree, launching yourself into the world, obviously, becoming going down this path that, there are some people who have the spark of, I want to serve people and they become social
Mhm.
workers and they don't get paid very
True.
well. And some who have the spark of service and say, I'm going to uphold and execute the law and choose to practice in these ways. And they get paid a little bit better, which is nice when you're in New York because, that
It
can
is
be expensive.
true.
But as you were launching yourself and securing your first job, and, you also held a tenure there that I think, when it comes to people reflecting their resumes, you've really, I'd say you come off as a very committed individual. You
Very.
have very much had loyalty. You seek to sort of change systems and build within the communities that you decide to belong to. What was it like for this first job? Had you interviewed a lot of firms with someone with so much integrity, right?
Yeah.
How did you sort of make this decision of where to dedicate the next, decade
It's
of
such
your
a
life?
this is one of my favorite stories ever because one of my greatest mentors in my life actually had a hand in this one. So if anyone's been through law school, they know that your 2L interviews decide what your second year internship is going to be. And all of the big firms have a process whereby they look at all of the top 10 students in the class, of which I had found myself at number 6 in my class. And so career planning comes to me and says, where's your resume? You haven't submitted anything. I said, I want to work for the U.S. Attorney's Office. I want to learn about immigration. I want to understand, human rights. And they're like, oh no, not for a student in the top 6. No, no, we put your application in for you. Yeah. So I'm getting all these phone calls from all these firms in the city. And this is absolutely the honest to God truth. I won't say the name of the firm, but I had an interview for a 2L position on September 11th, 2001, in Lower Manhattan. And I said, I know this is not right for me, and I canceled. And I'm coming out of evidence class on September 11th, and I hear about what happened with the World Trade Center. And I thought to myself, how many more times do you need clear messaging? But like, I had not intended to go. I was applied, not really against my will. That's maybe an overstatement, but it was not aligned with my life path. This is not for you. Was the clear indication. This is not for you. This is not your path. I did take, and it was still competitive to get an internship at the U.S. Attorney's Office, even though it was unpaid. Still obtained one. And I still went ahead and did that. And I got to be in that office in the aftermath of those events. And I have to say, it taught me more than I ever could inside of a large law firm. I wish all those people well. I work with them often, and I respect different cultures of practicing law. But when I know something's not right for me, I don't need help. And I've told that story many times. And some of the people who know who put my application in know who they are, but I know that they were doing what they thought was right for me. But there is no substitute for that. That's what I've learned in my life. There is no substitute. If I look to my left or my right, the place I'm not looking is inside me.
You have never failed yourself, Libby Clark.
Well, when I've paid the price. Let me just tell you. When I have deeply regretted it. And I've also learned, too. But so I did take a job with a small firm in New York, and I cut my teeth learning real estate development. And it is hard, and it was brutal, and it was, I think, a training ground as I look back, worthy of someone who really wanted to understand power dynamics. I mean, if I said to you that I wanted to trade in power, I could not have been more clear with my intention. I learned how to trade in power, the good, the bad, the ugly, and I've seen things, and that is not a world that was, when I started out, open to women. It was, and still to this day, I'm not entirely sure that it is, but it's different. So I spent a lot of my career learning the dynamics of real estate development, investment, how high stakes, how pressure filled, how and sort of behind the scenes. Did I think that's what I would be doing? Not really, but I was drawn to it because it was watching power.
I mean, it's also, to think about all the different kinds of law you could have practiced to decide to go into something that's directly tied to physical space, to land, to infrastructure, to things that are lasting. This isn't, you could have gone into a number of different kinds of practice, but there is something very grounded about being able to
and providing housing and looking at environmental decisions and looking at sustainability and looking at and having having a bird's eye view or sort of a window seat or whatever you want to call it to those kinds of decisions. And I have been in some of the most difficult rooms that you can imagine, building homeless shelters, listening to people scream and fight and argue with each other, building housing, building, all kinds of different infrastructure projects and manufacturing and just listening to the variety of positionality that there really is and sort of being positional and watching people be positional. I have found it, I'll be very honest, I have found it to be one of the most humbling experiences of my life is to see humans up close in their most indignant and righteous, watching their hearts kind of bleed out of their mouths, even while they don't agree with each other, and really understand what we are made of.
I mean, we are more painfully similar than we
That's
are.
what I find. And I wish I could, if I could package that into a little pill and give it to people, I would. But I do think that's what my soul was seeking when it chose the path. It
Mm,
wasn't to be righteous. Um, it wasn't to be a warrior for the underserved. And to all my friends who do that, I just want to give you a shout out. I love you. But to, it was to look at power up close. I think I was supposed to be learning something about it.
wow. So simultaneously, as you are charting a powerful career, you're also living a personal life. So,
Mm.
like these things, it's
They
like
have a way of doing that, right?
there is like, the Livy who has to brush her teeth in the morning and maybe buy clothes and maybe like,
Hmm.
pay for things. And,
Yeah.
how was it for you and how did you start to establish and what were some of the ways in which you showed up with your resources, right? Obviously, as you're increasing in your
Mhm.
own ability to have earnership and asking for more, receiving more, and then certainly deciding where those resources go. Obviously, in the beginning, things you're establishing, but can you share some inflection points and sort of some of the ways in which you found yourself allocating your money at different stages of establishing yourself as a young woman?
Yeah. I mean, um, one of the things I learned very early on was, and this came from my mother, which is the power of a budget, the power of intentional spending. And so, even from the time that I was a very young lawyer, we all carry financial, not all of us, but many of us carry financial debt from law school and these kinds of things. I was a person who believed deeply in using my money for what represented my values, right? And one of the things that represented my values was um, was having impact and making sure that I understood where I could have impact. And an early stage, the greatest place I could have impact was in not letting my ego, my stature, different kinds of things get away from me. And the reason for that is I had a very early on mentor say to me, be careful not to build a concrete castle. And I said, okay, what does that mean? And they said, every time you spend, you put a brick in the wall. Every time that you commit to something and you make a financial commitment, you're putting a brick, right? And you have to keep laying those bricks and you have to make sure those bricks stay upright and you have to, right? So like there's a time where you can essentially build yourself into a tower you can't get out of, right? Where your spend has been so unintentional that you need to keep living this life, right? And if you want to pivot, you may find you're in the tower and you can't get out. You are in a beautiful tower. Lots of people look up to you, but there you are in a room you can't escape. And I will tell you, as I sit here today, that piece of advice alone has enabled me to be pivoting when I need to follow those yeses because I didn't believe the castle held the sort of the penultimate answer. Um, so just because everybody else was living in a castle, that was hard to resist. It was hard to resist and to say, um, okay, and to listen to my advisors who said, what does matter to you? Where is your intention? Who do you want to be? What kind of decisions do you see coming down the pike for you where, being liquid is going to matter, where having resources to be able to say no to something is going to really make a difference, right? I was also up close and personal to real estate development decisions. So understanding how to read pro forma, how to understand what the return on investment was, the cost of money, the different things that you learn. They don't teach you those in law school, to say to you transparently. You learn those on the streets, and you learn them from your clients, and you learn from listening. But being able to um, uh, watch people suffer from their own FOMO, watch people suffer from not doing their due diligence, watching people do too much due diligence. And by too much, I mean paralysis by analysis, and sort of watching behaviors and saying, okay, but it really comes down to my lesson from my mother, which was, what does my dollar mean to me? And how do I make it advance the kinds of experiences that I want to have? And I never found I could do that if I was looking to what's going on to my left or my right. Right? Like so I think part of it was essentially eschewing maybe what my colleagues were doing, buying big houses, driving fancy cars, doing different things. It's not that I couldn't have done that, but I couldn't have done that and stayed true to my intentions. Does that make sense? So a lot of it was, I'll tell you one thing I did, because I learned something in real estate that is, you buy the ugliest house on the block and then you redo it, right? Because you want the cheapest piece of real estate in the most expensive neighborhood. So I did that. I did that right before I listened to my intuition, and I bought real estate that was in areas that I thought were going to be up and coming. And some of my best gambles have been on knowing how to do that, and not doubting. And one day I was driving, I was on a lunch break, and I said to I'm always talking to the powers that be in the car, and I said, I got to find somewhere else to live. I was going through a divorce. I was like, gosh, I really need, and I pull up in New York, and there's a man bringing garbage out of the house, and he's about to put a for rent sign up in front of this small bungalow. And I get out, and I said, are you going to put a for rent sign up? He goes, yeah. I said, I'll rent it. He goes, on what conditions? I go, rent to buy. Then he's like, okay, don't know anything about the house. And and he said, okay. And I did it on the spot. I never second guessed. I was like, yep. I mean, the odds of that happening are so rare that I thought, there's no way this is not a yes. And I listened. And that turned out to be the greatest investment I ever made. And I returned on that investment is probably now about 10 times.
Wow. Oh,
like,
Libby, I'm like, I just need you in my court all the time. I'm like, there's no wonder. I mean, no wonder your clients are like, this woman's indispensable. Like, I mean, it is like,
yeah.
I'm like,
But that's part of it, is like, how do there's so many reasons to say no, but I challenge people to tell me what it takes to say yes. And the answer is it's very little. It's self-trust. It's the foundation of autonomy. It's like, if I knew that a decision that I made, regardless if it went well or poorly, that on that day when I found out the outcome, that I'd be my best friend, that I would not harm myself in any way, right? Could I make that decision freely? See, I don't think we're afraid of making mistakes or failing. I think we're afraid of the voice that comes on the day when we perceive it didn't go well. That is our deepest fear, is a confirmation of our own inner voice. And if we suspended that voice, I say this to my clients all the time, what happens if this or that? What if it does? How are you talking to yourself on that day? How resourceful are you? How creative are we going to need to be? But if you're going to condemn yourself, then you're right. We should not do this. We should not do this next step or this acquisition or this thing, because I can't protect you from you.
Amen.
Everything else we can do.
Yeah.
We can get really creative with finance, with with pivoting, with plan B, with plan C. But if that's the voice, I can't help you with that.
Ooh, so do you also have like therapists you recommend? No, I'm joking.
Well, actually, honestly, it's true. It's funny that you say that. My teaching partner is a clinical psychologist. So one of the things I founded in my career was the Humanized Lawyer Project. And I did that with Dr. Carrie O'Hara, who's a clinical psychologist. She specializes in treating lawyers, but certainly not me, because that would be weird. But my business partner will often say to people on the stage, I get all my best material from Libby, which I think is hilarious. And I'm always like patient number one. So I'm always like revealing myself, like this is the stuff that goes through my brain. So no, I don't have therapists I recommend, but I have been on stage under the observation of one calling out my stuff for a while.
I love that. Talk to me about this inner knowing that you have had that has been so powerful and self-directed and so connected to source, universe, however anyone chooses to name that. And talk to me about being a mom and the wisdom of self and how and in what ways and what does that look like as a mom who's raising a young one, and that connection to self is something that it seems like you were born with it, right? And I feel like all of us are, right? But
Mm-hmm.
there are layers. So what has that been like as a mom?
I
How do
think,
you sort of look at that?
yeah. I have two. I have a boy and a girl. So I have a daughter and a son. Both inform me differently, but maybe not because of their genders, but just because of their own autonomy and like who they are as humans. But one of the things my mom said to me before she passed away, she passed when I was 27, and she said, I won't live to see your kids, but I want to tell you this. And I said, okay. And she said, you don't own your children. They're gifted to you for a time. They're like on loan. Okay. So their arc, their journey is nothing more than your stewardship, right? So be a good steward. Do not control them, right? Because basically, what would happen if I inserted my knowing for theirs is I would rob them, or I would sever, which is the word I use, I would sever their connection to source. And I refuse to do that. My job is to shape the container in which they make decisions inside their connection to source. All right. So, like, if I think I know the way, if I think I know the right thing, if I think I know who they're supposed to become, I'm severing that connection to the authentic self, right? So I'm more of a shaper of decisions, right? What's the skill I can give you to look at this? What's the power I can do to help you frame how you look at this? What's my life experience that I can bring to you to help you navigate the use of your own power? One of the things my kids know about me very deeply is I never take a first pass at anything. Anything they need to go ask for it themselves, whether that's at school, the soccer coach, with wanting the role in the school play. I'm here as I'm second string. That the first thing you have to do in my world is use the voice that you were given.
Mm, yeah.
Because there is no one who will speak your truth better than you. There is no person, there is no stand in for the
Mm.
power of your own truth, right? Find it, say it. I always teach them to say it in 10 words or less. If you can't
Mm.
speak your truth in 10 words or less, it isn't your truth yet. It's an explanation, it's a defense, it's a justification. Truth is simple, truth is short.
Oh, just so much like just mic drop, mic drop, mic drop. Okay.
But
So like
that's me as a mom, for real. Sorry.
I'm like
Yeah.
imagining you like have this vision of you with like a giant staff, like when I
Like my,
like
yeah,
like
my
it's not
magician.
a sword, it's not like it's not,
No.
but it's like the staff of truth and wisdom that can be wielded like a sword if needed, but is ultimately
Mhm.
there to like hold this beam of connection and truth. And it's really this beautiful visual of you. I want to know about how you like people, and in what context do you want people to engage with you as you present your work today? As I have grown to know you now, as everyone else has in this very like beautiful, intimate way. And your skill set and accolades and ability to execute is so diverse and complex and can be you. I mean, you can be a force in multitudes of situations, right? And so when it comes to that right sort of pairing of the clients you want to work with and the ways in which you like to express your work, because you get this beautiful privilege of being like, and this is who I am and this is how I want to do it, right? What does that marriage look like, and how do you want people to best sort of come to you when they want a piece of this Libby Clark life
Yeah.
experience?
My clients are seeking a form of coherence, right? Like we live in a very chaotic world. I work with a lot of founders, a lot of owners, a lot of CEOs, a lot of people who manage a tremendous amount of chaos, right? And part of what they're looking for, and I don't think they get a lot of, is integration. There's a lot of advice. There's a lot of like, take my advice. I'm not using it. But no matter what, we've developed here in our world, at least here in the West, a sense of siloed voices of advice, right? You have your accountant, you have your lawyer, you have your financial people, you may have a banker, you have all these voices. And at the end of the day, you have to integrate. You have to do the job of stitching this together because we've lost holism. We've lost holism in our culture, just generally speaking. To be a specialist is to be king, right? But to be integrative is to be whole. So who are the people that hold the space for integrative work, right? And so part of what my clients are seeking is not me to tell them what to do. A lot of my clients know exactly what to do. What they don't know how to do is to clear the path from here to there, which is how do I execute? How do I actualize? How do I take knowledge to behavior? Knowledge is not behavior. A lot of people can give you knowledge. A lot of people can tell you to read this book or look at this thing. But when you need somebody like in the trenches, the person who's going to sit next to you and say, gonna jump out of this foxhole. We're gonna go. 3, 2, 1. You want to have that kind of, I would want someone next to me who is grounded and secure and isn't pretending that there aren't risks ahead, but is next to you.
Wow. I feel like I could keep you with me
Yeah.
for hours. I'd love to turn our attention to the future as we start to wind our conversation to a beautiful bow here. You know, your life has already created so much impact, and legacy undoubtedly has been occurring and building in ways seen and unseen throughout your life, and the people who you touch and impact. Looking back on this body of work that will be your human life from a young age of, I don't know, 102.
Thank you.
Libby, what is this body of work that you hope to reflect upon at that age?
I think that what I hope to reflect on is in the age of this ever increasing machine and mechanization, which is intended to help us be more efficient and more connected. My work is really about remembering what it is to be human and what it is to be connected and what it is to see the power in all the ways that we are designed, and to remember them, right? And to remain and to sort of remember the power of autonomy, the power of relational dynamics, the power of the self and the inner knowing before we give it away to sources and to voices that are not ours. That's a lost art. And I often reflect on, there's a TED talk by a brilliant cross-cultural anthropologist who's one of my heroes in life, Angeles Arian. And she says in the talk that there is a concept of Central American tribes called original medicine. And it's one of the oldest concepts in Central America, but it has this idea that not only are our fingerprints unique, but our voice tonation is unique. The coloration in our eyes has never been seen before. So what I want to leave everyone with is our deepest humanity is that we feel the world like no one else has. We see the world like no one else has, and we will speak it back into the world the way no one else has, which is why no one has your medicine. No one knows what you should do. And every time you try to offload that, you are giving away the single power you came to use. So my job is to steward people into the use of their original power in medicine. It isn't to tell them what to do, it's to actualize what they already know.
Oh, God. Yes. Yes.
Right?
Yes. 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 Okay. Two final questions. Second question, or first of the second. You are a deeply wise, powerful, profound woman who has great taste and loves beautiful things and is integrative in all the ways. I would like for us to unpack, if you could quickly, your most recent fabulous way in which you've spent your money.
Okay. So one of the things that I have spent money on is I have recently invested in a redevelopment of, this is going to sound funny, so I'll try to keep it really, really brief, but I have done a reinvestment in former religious spaces into housing. So areas that have gone from what used to be rectories, nunneries, houses of worship that are now fallen either into disrepair or non-use for reasons we won't get into. One of the things that I have spent my time and money behind is making those accessible housing for communities that would otherwise be suffering from blight, from the non-use of those buildings. So for me, that's the win-win-win.
Oh, that's incredible. Okay. And then the last question is, clearly you stand in service to others. You stand in service to our human divinity. You stand in service to the preservation of that which is so special and unique of all of us. What is it that you are calling in that we can support you in, that we as an audience can stand in solidarity with you? What are you calling in that we can rise to the call?
Remain loyal to yourself. That's what it is, to remain loyal to you. Every decision that faces us, from investment to starting the new business to making the next acquisition to dreaming and actualizing that which is big, is terrifying. And yet nothing ever wonderful happens unless we act within the terror and find a way to connect to, no matter where this goes, the place I made this decision from was in loyalty to self. And that's the thing that if I could teach people to hang on to that, there will be bad days, there will be bad investments, there will be things that we think, God should never have done that. And yet I'll remind you, why not? Why shouldn't you have done it? Because on that day, you were connected, you were making the decision, and who is still to say, right, that this wasn't the lesson that you're here to learn, So I think loyalty to self on the good and bad days are the things that move us forward to progress, to becoming who we want to be. Because without risk, there are no heroes.
Libby, I wish I could just talk to you every day. I don't have any big projects, but I wish I could also just hire you just to
Thank
be
you.
closer. I'm like, how can I just be closer to this woman? It's been an absolute treasure and gift in ways seen and unseen to have you here today on Getting Rich Together. I am tremendously grateful to you. Thank you.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It has been an honor, and I'm grateful to you.
Thank you for listening. This is the conversation we come back to every single week. Real women, real wealth, and what becomes possible when we stop being silent about money. If today's episode moved you, don't let it stop here. Wealth Catalyst is where women go to take it further. Our Freedom Tour salons are gathering women in 32 cities this year. Intimate evenings in homes and private spaces where women talk honestly about money, risk, and what they're building. And if you're ready to go even bigger, join us at the Wealth Catalyst Summit, a full-day event in New York City this May and San Francisco this October. Find your city and claim your seat at wealthcatalyst.com. We'll see you there.